Hi, and welcome to Yeshiva Shem V'Aver. I'm Rabbi David Katz. This week is Ger number 20. The title is going to be very simple and to the point. Ger 101 in University of the Ger. So here we go. This one's laid back. I gave a little bit of a precursor to before we recorded. And this class is just an open for discussion, not debate, but anybody has comments to put in to this discussion as I teach, feel free. This should be a reference guide to Noahides, future Noahides on the fence, Noahides, people on either side, any curious nature of the Ger, here you go. We're not going to exhaust this. It's what we do every other day of the year is the exhausting part. So this should be just a little bit of, I guess you could call it Shulchan Aruch, right? We do the Gemara, which is how you say it in English? The discussions, the debates, the fire, and the engine that makes it run. And then out of it you should have pearls or fruits that you can eat right away and grasp and take from it, that doesn't require intensive labor and study, something that you can grab right away and pick up and try to understand. So we haven't given one of these in a long time. We've certainly done the work, and let's now give back some fruit that people can get right away. It was brought to my attention on Facebook. Let's go ahead and start with this. I received on Facebook a message from a Noahide saying, Rabbi Katz, can you refer me to a website or an article or somewhere to read about Noahides taking on more than their 7? Has anybody ever heard this question before? Everybody at once, right? A Noahide can take on more than 7 laws. This is, I think we've all heard this, okay? So, what is the basis of a Noahide taking on more than his 7 go to heaven? What is it rooted in? Where do we find the answers to these things? So let's base off of that question and premise. Can a Noahide do more than 7? That should be the party line coming into this class. So anybody who asks the question, can a Noahide do more than 7? Refer to Ger number 20, Ger 101. And by the way, on the website, it should be pinned at the top, if you don't mind. Once this is done, people should have access to this class the most easiest. Okay. Idolaters, B'nai Noach, Noahides, Gerim. Lots of terminology we have. Rabbis are a dime a dozen. We all know that. Everybody has a local rabbi. Then there's streams of rabbis. Then, let's say you're educated enough to make an educated decision that I want only an Orthodox rabbi. And that becomes, with the intent to make it easier, actually becomes harder. As there are many, many, many blends of Orthodox rabbis. In fact, every Orthodox rabbi is his own blend, if you want to know the truth to the matters. Right? Each one, as he sees it, that will be Mount Sinai, according to him. Present company included, probably, not to be excluded. It is what it is. But that's today. In today's world, we all have opinions, we all have viewpoints, we have our limitations, we have our boundaries and borders, and our life experiences. So let's go to a more objective source, if we may. Okay. Jewish history in literature. Let's just give a quick overview of all of history, just for context. 6,000 years of creation divided into three 2,000 period times. 2,000 years of chaos will end with Noah and his boat. 2,000 years of Torah will begin and end with Abraham and the destruction of the Second Temple. 2,000 years of Mashiach will begin with a false Messiah and will end with the Messiah. Right? I think that's a clear depiction of the time periods. Now, the last time period, the days of the Messiah, what actually happens for our intent is that those 2,000 years of Torah were inscribed in literature for these last 2,000 years. Call it the Talmud, which is the time of the Tanoim. Those are the rabbinical titles of those rabbis, Tanoim. Then there, after about a couple hundred years, they saw a decline in the scholarship. That era then became Amoraim. The Amoraim gave way to the Gaonim, which means geniuses. Each one took a title. The teachers, the revealers, the geniuses, meaning those with a sharp head. Not literally the geniuses, but those that knew what they were talking about. Then you have the Rishonim. You've probably heard of the Rishonim. You may have called them, one of them, Rashi and the Rambam. Right? A Tana, by the way, of the Tanaim would be Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Amoraim, maybe you've heard of Rava, Abaye, Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish. You've heard of these names? These are Amoraim. Shmuel. Again, the Gonim, Sarja Gon is the famous one. He wrote a book of philosophy. The Rishonim, Rashi, Rambam, Ramban. And then finally the Achronim, the last ones, the later ones. Vilna Gaon, Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman, Chafetz Chaim, and David Katz. Just kidding. I would be the last of the Akron. And in our time period now, we're coming out of the time period of the Achronim. Some would even say it has ended. And my opinion is it did end. Well before David Katz came to the scene. I would think that the 80s and the 90s is when it ended. Lubavitcher Rebbe, Moshe Feinstein. That general time period. Then you have, the turn of the millennium. Judaism really is going through transition. And you may even say, Avadia Yosef, who just died, is the last of those old era rabbis. Where they literally just absorbed so much Torah and they could recall everything. Whether you love the Lubavitcher Rebbe or hate the Lubavitcher Rebbe, everybody says he basically knew everything. Now, again, there are levels of knowing, okay? We're talking on a reference scale. He knew everything. Avadia Yosef, it is documented and proven he had his grasp of everything. Now that, again, is on a reference scale. Right? Am I calling him Moses? No. But on a reference scale, these guys that was what defined that era. They were tremendous at referencing their knowledge. Okay, we come out of that time period, and now it's, like I said, every rabbi is Harav, Hagon, Hatzadik, Moshe Rabbeinu, Emes, Mamish, Geula, Behemi Rav Yameinu, Melech, Mashiach, Tzidkenu, Eliyahu, you name it. And they're going to be called it. So egos are big in this world today. We know that in politics and in the world scale. And that's what we've been born into. So the Ger is delivered. The Noahide, whatever you want to call them, before we get into this discussion. The movement of 7 laws of Noah is here through the internet primarily. And this status of rabbis is what we have. Wouldn't it be great to have the Rambam here? Rashi here to get things squared away? Yes, it would be. But we don't. We have millions of rabbis, potentially billions of Noahides, and we are expected to sift through this chaos and find order in the world. That's reality. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has an opinion. If you go on Twitter, you might have 15 million people listening to you. Right? That's also a predicament that we're in. For those that don't have the full view, which without scholarship, you're not going to have the view. on either side. That every opinion seems valid. Just to tell you a personal story, when I was returning to Judaism as a kid, and I didn't exactly know where God was leading me as a Bo Tshuva, I started to pray and learn in a very Orthodox, what's called a shtibel, really old school, black and white and the whole 9 yards. I didn't know what I was getting myself involved in. I liked it, not to say that I didn't. I just didn't know what my options were, and I was responsible in the way I was doing it. And one Saturday morning, I was walking to shul to pray for Shabbat, and across the street from the shtibel was a nice-looking synagogue. I don't know. I haven't been to a synagogue since I'm basically a bar mitzvah, 13 years old, until this recent time period in my life. And I say, hey, let's go check it out. I don't know if I'm committed to this synagogue I'm going to. I don't pay my dues. There's no membership fees. And from where I come from, you have to have, the membership fees and all this other stuff. So it's merit I saw as a weakness, unbeknownst to me. So I walked into Temple Emmanuel, and they were having fun with no yarmulkes, playing guitar and singing, and this is on Shabbat. And I'm saying, okay, I think this is a Reform synagogue, and pardon me while I leave. Reform is not exactly true. So I went back to the Orthodox synagogue, and I stayed there, and the story took, the shape the way it was going to be. With that said, from my perspective, that kid back then, any rabbi had an opinion. Every rabbi had a voice. If you have the title rabbi, you probably know more than I do. And I was listening. And you take this mindset for a while. Even when you get to yeshiva, eventually, a couple years later, I end up in Sfat in yeshiva. And as a young kid also, you get there, and they have what's called 6 months smicha. It's a joke. But it's the idea that once a bacher, a student, is in the yeshiva for 6 months, he makes himself qualified in his own eyes to educate the masses in Torah after 6 months. Right? And with that idea, you hear so many things. The good, bad, and the ugly. So until you really make it through, let's say even a good solid decade of intensive study, I think every opinion is going to resonate, even from an intimidation level. If I tell you, you come and say, I want to be a ger, and somebody says, well, the Rambam says there is no ger today. Well, that person just quoted a Rambam. You probably never even opened a Rambam. You're not even sure who the Rambam is. You just know that some rabbi told you. Now you don't even know who he is. It's very confusing. All right? And I know that the people in the audience now are on the forums that I look at every now and then. These are the questions that go on. Right? My rabbi said, well, which rabbi is it, and which book is he quoting, and is it in English, or is it in Hebrew, and was it cut and paste, and was it hearsay, and why are the rabbis arguing, and don't they know, I thought they know everything. And this is the picture that's painted. And again, there are answers to these questions. Don't think there aren't. But from the uneducated, which everybody goes through a period of uneducation. Look at Naaman. The story of Naaman, he is just some guy. Next thing you know, he becomes a Gertoshav. Next thing you know, his students are Ger Tzedek, and they are absorbed, and they become Torah scholars, and that is tshuva. Right? We all come from schmutz and nothing and knowing nothing, and if you put the time and effort and energy in, within 10, 15 years, you'll know what's going on. Jew or non-Jew. Right? Jews don't know until they put the time in. Noahides don't know until they put the time in. Jews are susceptible to porous point of views, and so are Noahides. This is life. So until you become a scholar, until these areas of Noahide laws become paved over correctly, there's going to be a lot of confusion. Again, the good news is there are answers to these questions. There is absolute truth in these issues. And that absolute truth is probably one of the hardest things in the world to do. Zohar says to make Gerim is the, in fact, hardest thing to do. the greatest honor of God. Noahide law is probably the hardest thing in all of the Torah, I think. That's my opinion. The Vilna Gaon says it's making blessings. He says that's the hardest part. But that was for Jews. I would like to ask the Vilna Gaon, if he were here, okay, in the Jewish world, maybe it's making blessings, but what if we were to bring back the ger? How would you view the infrastructure from Torah for the ger? I bet you he would say it is very, very hard. And that is why the ger is so obscure and vague and ambiguous and relatively unknown in our world today. You are asking the impossible for those that are in the field. I mean, it is highly technical and scholarly issues of study, and the people that study them, which is like nobody, but it's made available to Torah scholars that live in the Beis Medrash and the yeshivas, and those that are in the communities. This is not known to them. This is not their topic. It's not their world, right? We have things to do like, Rabbi, is this kosher or not? Is this permitted to wear this clothes? Is it shatnez? I mean, there are practical issues. Rabbis have not been accustomed to educating. What do I do with this goy in my synagogue? Right? That has not been dealt with forever. And now, all of a sudden, with the internet movement, here you go. Lots of non-Jews coming around, knocking the door. Rabbi, what can I come in? And rabbis, as we've seen, they're willing. Some of them, some not. How do we get in if we're a Noahide? How do we talk? How do we get along? Are we laughed at? Are we stared at? Do we fit in? Do we not? Do we take part? Do we pray? Do we sit? Do we stand? Are we a Shabbos goy? Do I not be a Shabbos goy? These are the questions, right? Get some one feedback here too, right? These are the things that need to be resolved, right? How do we deal with these things, right? So there's a very, very simple answer of eliminating 90% of these issues. Or maybe, probably even 100%. And with all intents and purposes. If you go around claiming to be a Noahide, right? Most people, and I'm surprised at this in my side of the world. I tell people say, hey, Rabbi Katz, what are you doing these days? I say, with a very esteemed return, because I like what I do. I think anybody that follows my work knows I genuinely like what I do. I say, well, I'm a rabbi for Noahides. They say, a what? Who? Noahides. I say, what's a Noahide? I would say, are you serious? You don't know what a Noahide is? They say, no. Those that follow the 7 laws of Noah. Oh, a Noahide. All of a sudden they find out. So once you have your CV express that you're a Noahide, you're going to get those mixed reactions, and more importantly for this discussion, you're going to get opinions. Right? Noahide, to me, as a Jewish rabbi, tells me that I should have an opinion. Just by nature. I have. What do you think about Noahides and going on the Temple Mount? That sounds like I should have an opinion. Because I know for a fact that I'm not going to open up the Talmud and find the word Noahide written. Simply because English is not in the Talmud. So once it's already not in the language, okay, I have no basis to judge the reality in front of me. I don't know what a Noahide is. Probably never learned about it. I know you keep your 7 laws, and beyond that, every rabbi in the world should have his own opinion and his own theology and philosophy. And God forbid I should meet one, then I won't have to really get involved. Right? So please don't involve me. Right? That's the basic take. And that is uniform once you call yourself a Noahide. But you want to eliminate just all that nasty kind of mud. When you get into the ger is just, really, really cutting to the source. Now, the problem with ger is it takes scholarship to know it, to prove it, to work with it. The ger side, it struggles to get it as a ger. Let's say to remove yourself from an English connotation and allow yourself to identify with a Hebrew term, which again, I bring in Sol Mazel when it's particular, not for my own interest. But Noahide's having a name. This is why I'm very into it. It's an ideological thing, not a David Katz thing. We're getting accustomed to a Hebrew name, right? Identifying with oneself as a Hebrew name, I think, greatly bridges the gap and acceptance upon oneself to be able to identify by calling himself a ger. Ger is Hebrew. It's different than Noahide. And I think that is a big leap one must cross. Getting used to dealing with Hebrew. And this is one of the biggest ones. This might even be the biggest. If you're going to debate in English, it is futile. 100% futile. To the point now that, when I first started learning Torah, 15 years ago, and I was limited to the English just like every other Baal Tshuva or Noahide. And you read the English and you swear on it. You swear and think you're doing great, and I understand, and you do. But once you get into Hebrew, like uniform, and you look back, I'll go to the bookstore and I'll go to the other side of the aisle every now and then and look at an English book. I never buy English anymore, but I'll look at it and I'll say, "Hey, this looks interesting." And you look at it, and you see right away they may be butchered, like the really creamy Hebrew part, and you say, "How could you do that? Well, why would you allow yourself to butcher that?" The guys that were in the class on the Parsha class I just gave, for Yishmael, he lived to be 137. The Hebrew says Me'ah Shanim, Shloshim Shanim, Sheva Shanim, 137 years. And what is the English saying? By Abraham, it's 100 years and 70 years and 5 years, and by Sarah, it's 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, and by Yishmael, they said in English, 137 years. Whereas the Zohar and the commentaries are very explicit. Ishmael earned the right to have it written just like Abraham and Sarah. Now, if you don't get into the Hebrew, you never know that. You never know it. And this is a problem. Why do I really crusade on this point? Because Ishmael does tshuva, he repents, and as far as I'm concerned, there are 3 nations in the world, says the Torah, Esav, Yishmael, and Yaakov. Right? Yaakov, we know, should be repairing his actions, the Jewish people. Esav is generally the Noahide world now, at least in the English world. I know there are parts of the world that are also getting on to things, but maybe I'm left out of the loop here, but a lot of Yishmael has yet to come around to 7 laws. And we know for a fact we're not going to get peace in the world until Ishmael does take on the 7 laws. The world must come uniform under God, under one God, and under one Torah. So to say that Ishmael somehow defected or defective and inconsequential is wrong. Absolutely wrong. So to translate his merits in terms of a transgression, to me, that is highly problematic. And that is today's world, right? We have rabbis making fun of the so-called idolater. That so-called idolater is going to repent one day. So you may win the battle now, and you feel good, and you put down the Christian, and you made him feel like he's nothing, and the Jew is this and that, but it's creating problems, because those Christians are eventually going to come out, and they're going to find the Noahide laws, any one of them, maybe not all of them right now, but they are coming out, and to have put them down, it already puts you on the wrong foot. Right? The Jewish example is already setting a wrong precedent. So the Jewish, let's say, outreach, or those in direct association with, let's call it the idolater who comes from idolatry into Noahidism, that connection has to be perfect. It really, really has to be perfect. If you want success and growth and that soul to feel like he's liberated and the past is the past and he's going into the world of God and he will serve God and work towards repairing the world, tikkun olam, tikkun adam, Jews and Noahides working together. So we want that to happen. But once we stick with only a contemporary point of view, a lack of scholarship point of view, things get dicey and everybody seems to have the better opinion. With that said, why don't we take a trip down memory lane and go visit the Rambam? Why don't we go back to the Rishonim? Remember who the Rishonim were? Right, the era of Bible commentary in its greatest, the Rambam, Ramban, Rashi, and those caliber rabbis. Where will you find their works? Does anybody here even know? You can type if you want. I'm curious to see. Where? I really want to know because I want to know if where we're holding. Where would I find a Rashi and Ramban commentary? Anybody tell me? All right. I want to research. I'm reading the Parsha. Okay, let's call it in English, and I want to research the stranger amongst you. I get to that pasuk, that verse, and I want to get and find out, hey, that stranger amongst you, maybe that's me. So I want to know what Rashi and Ramban are going to say, amongst others. Where do I look? Can anybody tell me? Look on the bookshelf in our Chumash. Chabad has Rashi commentary online. Bookstore, library, or ask a rabbi. Okay. You by stating those things, you are at the mercy of those people. All right. Chabad will translate it as convert every time, and that's a fact. Okay. The Chumash will tell you what they choose to want you to know. The bookstore will probably have no idea what a ger is. Maybe he'll know what a Noahide is. In the library, good luck. Ask a rabbi. He'll tell you all about the Noahide, his opinion. Okay, so let's just get a new word out there. Right? When you go back and you're learning the Parsha, which every Noahide does, that's a fact. And we know every Parsha you're going to hit those bumps, the stranger, the alien, the proselyte, right? We all know this guy, right? He may dwell amongst you. He might sit in your gate if you're lucky, right? We all know this guy. The place to look is called Mikros Gedolos. Okay? Mikros Gedolos. What the Mikros Gedolos are is a huge set of Chumash that has the psukim, the verses in it. And there are a set, and they're standard. Almost every Mikros Gedolos is the same. Okay? It's a standard set of Bible commentary. So let me just grab one of mine off the shelf, and I'll tell you who I see. Okay? So I'm just opening a random page. Random page. This is my Mikros Gedolos. I have Onkelos translated, Ramban, Rashi, Even Ezra, Orachayim, Das Lekanim, Sforno, Balatorim, Targum Yonatan, Rashbam, and that's it. Okay? So those commentaries are your classics. Also, Sivsei Chachamim, he's another one. Toldos Aaron is another one. All right, so these are the classics. And when I say classic, I mean classic. This is authoritative classic rabbinical literature. And this is step one. It goes Breish Shemos Vayikra Bamidbar Dvarim. Right, you can get them in a set in the stores. They're only in Hebrew. They're not translated as far as I know. Right, they're not right. They're only in Hebrew. But what I'm saying is this should be step one. Right, it's like when you work out in a weight room. I remember as a kid in high school. I was a strong kind of kid, and there was a teacher. We used to lift weights, and he used to say, let's start with the bar. I was saying, the bar? Are you serious? The bar weighs 45 pounds. He says, no, in weightlifting lore, right? The bar is a 45-pound plate on each side, right? So the bar is 45, each one's 45. Par, or the bar, is 135 pounds. So someone says lift the bar, they mean 135 pounds. So the bar here, okay, is Mikros Gedolos. Not English, not Chabad website. Sorry to say, not your bookshelf, okay, and not Ask the Rabbi. This has to be step one. Step one is Mikros Gedolos. This is my technique on it. Maybe I'm wrong. People may argue, but this is how it's done. You look up the verse in the Mikros Gedolos, and you'll say, but Rabbi, I don't know Hebrew. So this is where now the Noahide goes to the synagogue and talks to the rabbi. Right? You show up and you say, Rabbi, verse 23:4, Bamidbar talks about the stranger, the alien who dwells amongst you. I'm making up the reference, but you get the point. I would like to research this with you in depth, if you don't mind, in the Mikros Gedolos. Now, every rabbi on earth knows what Mikros Gedolos are. And if you prefer Sephardi, Mikrot Gedolot, okay? But in the yeshivish world, Mikros Gedolos. And you'd sit down with him, and if you say, Rabbi, I'd like to learn with you Mikros Gedolos on the ger, he will do it. It's just one of those things. Right? But if you come up and say, Rabbi, I want to know what the Noahide can do in Bible Scripture 23:4, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? It sounds intimidating. I don't know. What do you mean by the Noahide? I didn't see any Noahide in the Parsha. I don't know what you mean. And then you explain it. Well, I'm a non-Jew, and I'm trying to keep the laws. And the more apologizing and the more distance, think about it. If you're creating distance, then you are creating distance. But if you are creating closeness, you are creating closeness. Right? So, first step is get into the original literature. Get out of the English world. Get out of the distance world. Get out of us and them. Right? Get face to face. Sit down and learn the same book. Now, obviously, you're not going to know the Hebrew, but you have 2 ears last time I checked. And you can listen to what he's saying, and he's going to want to tell you. Right? So he looks up a source, and his eyes will open up, because that's what happens. You're asking him to learn something new, and it will be interesting. Any rabbi with half a brain that you ask him to learn something about the ger, and he looks there, he'll say, oh, Rashi doesn't say anything. So you say, okay, we'll learn all of the Mikros Gedolos on one page. I have time. I can wait 15 minutes. So he will find something every time. Every time. And there are about 100 locations of ger in the Torah. So you know what? Let's do an experiment just for fun. Okay? Let's get Bereshis. And I'm sure a couple parshas ago, last week, whatever, we all read Bereshis, correct? Yeah? And everybody saw Abraham explain that he was ger v'toshav anochi. Does this ring a bell? Abraham is saying ger v'toshav anochi. Okay. So now, let's go to where Abraham says it and see what we find in the Mikros Gedolos. I've done this before, but I have not memorized this, so let's just see what we find. Do a little bit of role playing. Okay. 23:4. Parshas Chayisara. Abraham says, in buying the cave of Machpelah, ger v'toshav anochi. Alright. Rashi. I'm going to translate in English. He's a ger from another land, and I'm dwelling with y'all. Alright. Midrash Agadata says, if you Arini ger ve'im, if you want to call me a ger, and if not, then I'll be Toshav. Alright, so maybe you'll call me ger, maybe you'll call me Toshav. Okay, Ibn Ezra, he's a ger dwelling in the land. That's what it means for Toshav. And ger means he's alone. Ramban, ger v'toshav, I am amongst you. He's talking about the burial. Second here. So the Sforno calls him literally a ger. Rashbam from a Goyish land. I have come to dwell here, and I'm dwelling with y'all. Therefore, I have no place to bury my people. That's the Rashbam. And the Orachayim. The reason why he claims ger v'toshav is because the Rambam wrote that you're able to give matan, a free gift to a Gertoshav, because that there is a mitzvah l'chiyuso. Oh, that's interesting. As it says, ger v'toshav chai imecha. Now, does that strike a bell? What I just said, the Orachayim. Did everybody hear this? We get to the Orachayim, yeah? 1, 2. Gertoshav. The reason why he claims ger v'toshav is because Rambam wrote that we have to give gifts to the Gertoshav, as it's a mitzvah to sustain him. As it says, ger v'toshav, and he shall live amongst you. How does this strike you guys? With Abraham saying ger v'toshav, and we find Orachayim getting right into business here. So you go to your synagogue, talk to the rabbi, and what do you find? Bam! And every time you look up Gertoshav or ger this, ger that, you will find at least one of the commentaries on the page bringing something to the real Noahide world. So at that point you say, Rabbi, what do you mean it's a mitzvah to sustain the ger? And then he'll say, I have no idea. So you say, well, let's get the Rambam. The Rambam is quoted here from the laws of, it's called Zechia or Matana. The rabbi would read, Halacha Yud Aleph, Halacha 11. The third chapter from there, Halacha 11. And you look it up, and next thing you know, you are learning. The rabbi will look it up, and discussion commences. Partnerships begin. You are launched in the Hebrew world, which begins this lesson that we are on now. The Rambam. Everybody quotes the Rambam. Right? The Rambam says there's no Gertoshav today. Wait till the Sanhedrin or the Jubilee year. Right? We've all heard this. Jubilee year, Sanhedrin. But yet, why is it I just looked up in the Parsha and I asked about ger v'toshav by Abraham, and the Orachayim, he should have let me know, hey, Gertoshav, no. There's no Gertoshav here. That's only when the Jubilee and the Sanhedrin comes. So why is the Orachayim commentary so quick to educate me about the Rambam? Go look at the Rambam talking about we have a mitzvah to sustain the Gertoshav. So you go look it up, and that's when it starts. Meaning, jump into the authentic references. Right? When you call the rabbi, don't say, I'm a Noahide, I'm far from you, I'm distant, I don't speak your language, I'm helpless, please help me. Be a little bit armed and say, let's go into the Mikros Gedolos. That is username and password. Mikros Gedolos. And when the Parsha comes, you jump in and bam. There's the Orachayim commentary. Rambam on cue. We have liftoff. Gertoshav reference. And that is the Rambam. Email me. I'll send you a response with the spelling. No problem. So you get into Rashi, Rambam, all those Mikros Gedolos rabbis. And you don't have to know their names, right? Just know Mikros Gedolos is the book. Let the rabbi find it, and he will tell you. Anybody who has a half of an interest in learning Torah will tell you. Why? Because it is interesting. I am not doing this because of a self-righteous mission and I am going to change the Noahide world. No. I hate to break the news to you. Yes, I like Noahides. Love them. We get on great. But this is not a self-righteous mission. Where it began initially is the ger is really interesting. That's the truth. When you learn the Torah about the ger, you will find out he is really interesting. And then you find out he's always called a convert and a stranger, and he's not this and he's not that. Then he gets really interesting. Why are we calling him a convert? Why don't we want him around? Why are we telling the convert to eat treif meat when really it's the Noahide ger? And the questions come and come and come. And eventually you say, there's something here. Then every one of the 100 mentionings in the Torah become really interesting. Don't taunt the ger 46 times in the Torah. But that's a convert. Well, why would you think that? Open up the books, look it up. One thing leads to another. You'll find out the ger of don't taunt the ger is every type of ger. Even a Baal Tshuva Jew is called a ger. Even if you stepped out of church yesterday, you could be called a ger. Don't taunt him. So lesson number 1, be authentic. Get into the Rambam. Understand why the Rambam says until the Jubilee year, and Sanhedrin they'll say, but there are other Rambams that dispute it, and you'll find out it's not actually a dispute. It's called Svei Dinim. 2 different interpretations to what the Rambam is talking about. In that law over there, that is, let's say, the Messianic Gertoshav. The other one is another level. And the scholarship should be provided by the honest rabbi of learning, meaning honestly in his learning, not to make stuff up, not to fudge over it, but to produce a true learning. And you'll see it's not that difficult. It should not be that difficult for him. As for reference sake, chapter 14:7 in the laws of the Rambam, Isurei Bia, the Rambam says very clearly, taking the words from the Talmud, who's a Gertoshav? He who keeps the 7 laws of Noah. If you keep 7 laws of Noah, according to the Rambam, and you have an interest of Israel or Jews at all, you are called Chasidi Omos Olam, the righteous or pious of the nations. You are a ger toshav. In fact, he calls you a ger, not even ger toshav. So the Rambam then says, well, then why do we call him toshav? Everyone's going to say, because he has to live in Israel. No! Because he is permitted to live in Israel. So why Israel's in a state of exile, or let's say when it's redeemed and not in exile, you can't just live here. Right? That's when it becomes based in, this and that. What about when Israel's in exile? Can you live here without the proper format? Yes. And then you say if you can live here, you can live anywhere and be called Toshav. So there are different types of Toshav. There are different types of ger. And the sensitivity of language is very rich, advanced scholarship. And the Rambam takes it up. So does Rashi. Now listen to this. Rashi even says a ger toshav, who we know by Rashi's commentary and the Talmud, says a ger toshav keeps Shabbat. And they'll say, one reason, Bob, I know you said this, it is to be a Shabbos goy. Sound familiar? Bob? Rashi says to keep Shabbos is to be a Shabbos goy. Or that's one opinion of why the Gertoshav keeps Shabbos, to be a Shabbos goy. Okay. Rashi then argues. He says this is not a Shabbos goy. That is not what the Gertoshav keeps it for. Get this. This is really interesting. Rashi says if you've come out of idolatry and now you are a Gertoshav, by a simple definition of having rejected idolatry and eating non-kosher meat, you are called a Gertoshav. Not even in the same world as the Rambam. Totally different connotation. And because you rejected idolatry, you are obligated to keep Shabbat not as a Shabbos goy, but because to break Shabbat is idolatrous. Why do we keep Shabbos? To say today Hashem created the world. And you're going to go and break Shabbos? So to have rejected idolatry and then break Shabbat, he says, is idolatrous. Now that's one definition of Gertoshav. Mind you, it's a definition every Noahide in the world can call himself as. So if you were to walk up to Rashi in France and say, "Hi, Mr. Rashi, I am a Noahide," he would say, "Really? Well, Mazel Tov. You are a Gertoshav and you are obligated to keep Shabbos." And you are not allowed to flip the lights on. Totally fantastic learning. So that's Rashi. The Rambam then has his view. The Ramban has another view. All the authentic Rishonim have their view. But there is one uniform concept amongst every Rishon. Not one goes against what I'm about to say. The Gertoshav exists always. Tomorrow, today, and yesterday. The ramifications, then, they differ, but that is not applicable to this conversation. Right? Maybe the Jew doesn't have a mitzvah to give vitality. Maybe it means you don't have to become a Gertoshav. Maybe it means you have to become a Gertoshav. We're not getting into those discussions. But person X says, Rabbi, I wish to be a Gertoshav. The answer is yes, Beseder Gamor, have fun, Gesundheit, enjoy yourself. Why do I want to be a ger? What is a ger? What is a Noahide? Okay. A Noahide is a person who leaves idolatry, basically, let's say. He comes to wherever, by whatever outreach organization or enlightenment issue, he understands there are 7 laws of Noah. Right? He comes to this, forget Rashi of just rejecting idolatry. Right? The Gemara, the Talmud realizes that a true Noahide is he who follows 7 laws of Noah. Even if Rashi is correct, we're not getting there. Okay? Rejecting just idolatry. He keeps 7 laws of Noah. Now let's throw him a bone and say he even does it according to the laws Moses was taught at Mount Sinai, and that is the classic definition of the Rambam. So this is a regular, ordinary, average, by the book Noahide. Right? Let's not put any labels on him. He understands he's a Noahide. He keeps 7 laws, and I don't know if he's happy with it or unhappy with it. That's where he is right now. Now he goes onto Facebook, and the Noahides are going on about, can he pray? Can he keep Shabbos? Is he allowed to walk down the street and chew bubblegum at the same time? Okay, all the things are being brought up, and it's confusing. And he says to himself like this: my general inclination is, Rabbi, I would like to do more. Okay, let's say it manifests in prayer, in Shabbat, whatever it is. You have a 7 by the book Noahide who wants to do that taboo word called more. And the first mistake is going to be arguing in the Noahide realm. Okay, because my rabbi says this, my rabbi says that. It will be a balagan. Guaranteed. If you like having your soul torn to shreds, stay a Noahide. If you want to do more. There's nothing worse than that. If you're content with only doing 7, great. More power to you. You are a Noahide. Have fun. Enjoy it. Talk to Noahide people who feel like you. 7 go to heaven. You're in. Okay. No arguments here. Right? You want to die for stealing? Hey, great. Awesome. Now, that person who wants to do more, and it is my belief that it is almost everybody. Right? There's definitely a sect of Noahides that are crusading to keep 7 or die and this and that, and that's fine. But I think, this is my opinion, okay, that separation is necessary and it's becoming a must. Now, why do I have this opinion? Because I know for a fact that there are a lot of so-called Noahides who wish or desire to do that taboo word called more. Now, should he wish to do more, that's where the Noahide must stop. He must no longer be called a Noahide. To continue being called one, it's confusing. It is tormenting to the soul, argumentative. Rabbis are going to chime in and make it more confusing, right? Because again, it's not because they don't know; it's because they don't know what a Noahide is. If they knew what a Noahide was, then it would be easy. But they don't teach in yeshivas Noahidism. Never. They teach 7 laws of Noah. Right? They teach 7 laws of Noah, and then they teach what is called the ger, for advanced learning. But this general term, call it goy or Noahide, right? These are big words that are rendered useless for the Noahide world. In terms of, Rabbi, show me what to do, my life and soul depend on it. Right? Okay. So now, to get into ger, we have to define very simply what is a ger. Talmud Avodah Zorah 64b. Ezehu Gertoshav. The Talmud, and you can please get in the habit of referencing this Talmud. Avodah Zorah 64b. Know it. It says very clearly, and this language is cut and paste amongst every rabbi that ever lived on this topic. Just like you see on the internet, rabbis cutting and pasting, so too did the rabbis of the Talmud, or of the Rishonim that commented on the Talmud. Ezehu Gertoshav. What or who is a Gertoshav? And they give 3 opinions. Rashi's view, he rejected idolatry and eats non-kosher meat. The accepted view by everybody, he follows 7 laws of Noah. And the other non-accepted view, he has accepted the entire Torah except for eating kosher meat. Now, again, everybody says the second opinion, and nobody has rejected the first and last. Okay. 7 laws of Noah entitles you to be called a Gertoshav. The most classic definition is Rambam Isurei Bia, is the section of law, chapter 14, law number 7. And he quotes, who is a Gertoshav? He who has accepted the 7 laws of Noah. He is called a ger, and he is Chasidei Omosa Olam. Now, why is he Toshav? Because he is allowed to dwell in Israel. Now, should you say, Rabbi, my name is Generation X, and I wish to dwell amongst Israel, and therefore I wish to be called Toshav as an extension to my title ger that I have merited by right of having kept and keeping a 7 law of Noah lifestyle as Moses was taught on Mount Sinai, as brought down by the Rambam. It is advisable to do this amongst 3 Jews. If you go to synagogue on Shabbos, because very good, done. 3 Jews saw you there, presumably that you introduced yourself and you said, hi, my name is X, and I keep the 7 Noahide laws. Done. You are a Gertoshav. Now, for all intents and purposes, we don't really care about the word Toshav. It's a furphy. Right? It just means, it's like, are you from the United States? Or are you from the United States of America? Now, no one's going to say, where are you from? The United States. Oh, which one? Of America? So no one's going to say, well, you're a ger. What kind? Toshav? No one does that. So once you are a Gertoshav or a ger, different world, different universe, say you're done with Noahideism. Because once, everyone says then, why are you pressing this ger stuff? Who cares? Why does it matter? Quit confusing people. Let them be Noahides. Why are you bringing in the ger? It's irrelevant. It's confusing. It's Hebrew. We don't even go by that. Everyone says it. Okay? The fact is, every Noahide on the planet has the right and merit to call himself a Gertoshav. That's number 1. That's a fact. Number 2, once you're Toshav, every place in the Mikros Gedolos that says anything with ger, 9 times out of 10, they're going to have the word Toshav to let you know this is not a convert. Right. Ger would be convert. I'm aware of that. That's what I'm saying. Look in the Mikros Gedolos, and you'll see Gertoshav. Okay, that's step one. So the Toshav is like, let's say your first name is Ger, and Toshav is your family name. That's how it works, right? Ger is like your name, and Toshav is the last name. Same concept. Very rarely in the Mikros Gedolos do you see the words Ger Tzedek. Very, very rarely. Very rarely. Now, most of the time you'll see just the word Ger. When you see Ger, then you need to approach a Torah scholar to work it out with you. Okay, I know this can be a convert. And the word is can. Because we are not excluding the convert. The question is, can it also be a Gertoshav? And that requires Talmudic study on the verse. Now here's the big one. What do I gain for being a Ger / or Toshav, whatever? The Talmud says you may keep Shabbat. You may, the Talmud explicitly says you can keep Shabbat. Rambam says you can keep any of the mitzvot. Prayer, charity, Shabbos, learning Torah, you name it. And I think these are the big ones that are always being asked. I was asked personally 2 days ago, Rabbi, can I learn Torah outside of my Noah Parsha? Okay? Beside the fact, from a Noahide, I believe can. All right, let's just divorce ourselves from discussion and argument. It's not worth it. Stop calling yourself a Noahide if you're asking that question. As long as you are not against Jews and rabbis working together. And that is the bottom line. I am a Noahide and I want to work, or I'm not against working with Jews. If you can say that, then, and you're saying, I'm a real Noahide, I really do it, I keep it, it's not new, I'm not checking it out, right? I'm here, I'm committed, I believe in this, and I believe that I am amenable to working with Jews. You should stop calling yourself a Noahide. It is in your best interest to call yourself a Ger, again, Gertoshav, to say, now, should I want to learn Torah? You may. Shabbos, you may. Tzedakah, prayer, you name it. All the mitzvahs, that last opinion in Avodah Zarah, Kol Torah Kula, the entire Torah, you may keep. Once you have this, now the Rishonim come to resonate a little louder. And you'll find that when the people like the Rambam mention even Ger Tzedek, 9 times out of 10, he's actually referring to a Gertoshav. The Ger Tzedek is a term used generally, spiritually and physically, for a Gertoshav who has come from a great distance, either physically to, let's say, a Jew from afar, or spiritually, right? I grew up in the Vatican, and today I keep Shabbos. And the Talmud is another source. Know it, spread it. Cut and paste, do what you got to do. Yavamas 48b. Now, Bob, you brought that up. Rabbis need to learn how to learn that. There's the Gertoshav there, as you brought up, and the Ger Tzedek, correct? If I remember the discussion correctly, it mentions the Ger Tzedek and the Gertoshav. Now, the correct way to learn it is the Gertoshav is applicable to Parshas, is either Yisro or Mishpatim. That's the one that says that either he's your Shabbos goy, or as a non-idolater, the Gertoshav keeps Shabbos. Then they say the Ger Tzedek is the one of the 10 Commandments in Parshas Ve'eschanan, that the Ger B'sharecha in the 10 Commandments in your gate keep Shabbos, with the Talmud Yavamas 48b says is the Ger Tzedek. Now, why is he called a Ger Tzedek? Because I need this Ger in my house keeping Shabbos, so my kids don't see you using my microwave on Shabbos. Then when you're going to leave next week, my kid's going to say, Abba, I want to cook a schnitzel in the microwave. So to prevent that from happening, when you come to the house of the Jew, you have to keep Shabbos to keep the spirit of Shabbos in the home. Now you'll go back to your house and you'll practice keeping Shabbos because you're holding there now. And when you interact with Jews, you know what to do. Ross, you might call that being a derech eretz ger. Knowing what to do, practicing what to do, learning what to do, and all the time on your own and back and forth with Jews until you know what to do. And you'll say it's for your good to know what to do, but you know what the real answer is? Noahides want Shabbos. If you don't know you do, soon you will. And you'll say, well, I'm a Noahide, not a Jew. Well, guess what? Jews also are not keeping Shabbos, if you didn't notice today. A lot of the Jewish people are not religious. And you know what the biggest secret is that they don't know? They also would like to keep Shabbos if they knew what Shabbos was. Most people don't know what it is. When you find out what it is, Ger or Jew, you will keep Shabbos. It is that simple. It is a time for you to live with God. Last time I checked, God wasn't too bad. Okay, how are we doing so far? I'm just, this is like telling it the way it is, right? This is the story. Okay, here we go. I might even go over the time for today, right? Let's just get all of the truth out of the bag, and let's just tell it the way it is. That's why you need to be called Ger. Forget Noahide. Over. Done. If you want more, or you are open to the idea of associating with a Jewish person, okay? Let's call it that. Call yourself a Ger. Now, you'll say that the Jubilee and the Sanhedrin, the only one that in the world that is saying that is forbidden is Rambam, and he doesn't even say that. All right, that is Isuri Bia 14.8. If you noticed, I said Isuri Bia 14.7. Any qualified Torah scholar should be able to make the difference between one law and the other, 7 and 8. Okay? 7 is one thing, 8 is another. 7 is unofficial, 8 is official. Meaning, I, the Jew, have a right or an obligation to help you in law number 8, if you should look it up. Law number 7, I don't have to help you. So they'll say it is in your own peril. If you become a ger, don't look to the Jews for help should you need it. Now that's a fact. Okay? If you become a ger, you cannot take your right of mitzvah l'chiyuso. But that is the consequence. Right? If there is a consequence, that's the consequence. Right? You would take on a Jewish type of lifestyle. The Jews are not obligated to help you. But here's a little secret. Okay? If you take on commandments and you go to synagogue, or you take your right of working with Jews, here's the secret: they will help you. It's just one of those things, right? It's not protexia and it's not insider information. It's called humanity. Okay, if somebody needs help, people will help. That's just the way people are, especially those that, let's say, are keeping Shabbos and these things. And it's not to say you're self-righteous because you keep Shabbos. It's just one of those derech eretz things. Right? People that believe in Hashem and Torah, if you are dying, people will help you. I assume the ger would help the Jew, and the Jew would help the ger. That's called derech eretz. So yes, the law has its limitations of vitality given by a Jew, but there are also limitations, and there are limitations. Meaning, the real mitzvah of vitality is if you become a slave and broke, okay, and the Jew owns you as a slave, because back in the Torah there was slavery in weird and extreme and exotic situations, okay, the Jew has to help you get out of slavery, and now he wouldn't have to. So you might find yourself in slavery. Last time I checked, CNN is not reporting slavery between Jews and the Gentile nations. Last time I checked. Probably not much to worry about. I will go on record as saying, should there be a change in the world's sociology and slavery comes back, or Shabbos becomes death-worthy, let's say rethink the ger issue. But, while Israel has rulership on its land, which happened in 1948, and we are still here, the ger is very much valid. If the state of Israel is dismantled by Netanyahu, and I now take my former residency in Dayton, Ohio, it might be a little bit different be calling yourself a ger. But while Israel has rulership on its land, absolutely in the authorities of law does the ger exist. According to Rambam 14.7 is Surei Bia. It is not the level of number 8, 14.8 in the Surei Bia. When the Jubilee comes, Sanhedrin comes, yes, it will be official, absolutely, and the Jew has an obligation to help. Bezrat Hashem will be there very close. In the meantime, we are achieving the first halacha. Should the state of Israel be dissolved, rethink all issues because something went terribly, terribly wrong, should that be the condition. May it not be seen in our days. Okay, Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, the Jews got the Torah. Go Jews, way to go, we're better than everybody. No, wrong thought. Okay, what Sinai is with the Torah coming down, it is absolutely liberation on the world. The predicament of Noah himself and his sons and their offspring inherited certain conditions. Right, how to receive the Torah, demographics. Sinai comes and says, okay, let's end this. Jews are given the Torah and the 7 laws of Noah. When you take on the 7 laws of Noah through Moses at Sinai, you are aligning yourself to the ultimate reality that the world was changed at Sinai into a Gertoshav world. So the Torah coming down at Sinai is the world opportunity to say, oh, so I am no longer an idolater. That was actually a false thought. I am actually a Gertoshav. I will stop thinking that I'm an idolater, and I will start being a Gertoshav, which is what I'm supposed to be. Should I wish to have more, I may progress to Ger Tzedek. If I wish to convert, I will convert. If I want to be a Gertoshav who simply rejects idolatry and eats non-kosher meat, I can do that too. The point is, idolatry ended at Sinai. Done. Now, the bigger revelation is, Ham and Canaan were subjected to become slaves from Noah's curse. Amalek has to be killed by, let's say, machine guns. That's what people think. Amalek can be destroyed and brought to holiness through the 7 Noahide laws. The 7 Canaanite nations do not need to be machine gunned down. They can be converted through the 7 Noahide laws and defeated and spiritually killed their idolatry and brought to holiness through the 7 Noahide laws. Sons of Canaan and Ham, you are slaves forever. Okay? That also can be undone at Sinai by taking on the 7 Noahide laws. So let me ask this question. Sinai, the Jews got the Torah. Go Jews. Who was this really for? On one hand, you can say, go Jews, we got the Torah. On the other hand, you can say, liberty came to the world. Mashiach, then, is the time period when that is realized. When the world says, hold on a second. Sinai, that was world liberation. The Jews were the vessel that the Torah came down. One world, one mission, one goal that is not Babylon and the Tower of. It is liberation, even Amalek, even Erev Rav, even Gerim, even Ham, even Jews realizing 7 laws of Noah shall set you free. And I said even Jews. How are we doing so far? Good? All right. Ger Tzedek, the riddle of the Torah. What is a Ger Tzedek? He's a non-issue. The Torah says Ger. Maybe it says Ger Toshav. You get into the commentaries, again, Mikros Gedolos, from there, you explore, sometimes, probably 1 out of 10, you're going to find the words Ger Tzedek. And it's interesting, because the 10 Commandments means that the Ger in your gate keeps Shabbos. And all it says is Ger. Now, if you take an idolater and you call him a Ger, that is a bad thing. Because we don't want him keeping Shabbos and he's going around on YouTube and saying, hi, my name is XYZ, I keep Shabbos and I love idolatry. We don't want that. So the Ger, rabbinically, in the 10 Commandments became called Ger Tzedek. Now, you'll say every convert's called a Ger Tzedek. That is a name that is an IOU of this convert that he owes an offering to the third temple. Also, Abraham was called a Ger Tzedek, and all of his offspring are called Ger Tzedek. Abraham was the first of the Ger Tzedek. He is like your father, and after 2 generations, Abraham, now you have chosen to become Jewish. Should that not be your approach? The 10 Commandments called it Ger Tzedek to say it's a descriptive term, right? What kind of ger are you? I'm Toshav, meaning I am aligned with Judaism, Jewish people, Israel, whatever you call it. I'm a ger. Oh, what kind of ger? Ger Tzedek. What do you mean? Well, Tzedek means righteous, and I am a ger, and I happen to be a righteous ger. An unrighteous ger might be one who has simply rejected idolatry, and he has not taken on even the 7 laws of Noah. I consider myself a bit righteous, not self-righteous. I take on 7 laws of Noah, and I keep Shabbos kehilchasa. Right? So therefore, the Torah has told me that I have a righteous flair to my ger title. Only because there are other gerim that are not so righteous. They don't even take the 7 laws of Noah. So tzedek means righteous. On that respect. Okay. And again, a lot when you the riddle part is when you get through the midrash and all these things, the Ger Tzedek becomes like a hidden character of the Torah. Rachav, Tamar, Ruth, David's mother, Bathsheba, all these Yehudite women are all related to, in either side of the fence, the Ger Tzedek woman. Mostly. That's just one example. 100 places in the Tanakh about, give or take, of ger. So every week, this is why the articles keep coming out of Sul Mazel, right? Every week you will find ger. Promise you. Every week you will find something relative to the ger. That means every week there's a reason to go into the Mikras Gedolos. Every week there's a reason to call your rabbi. Every week there's a reason to read the article that's confusing on Sul Mazel. And now, hopefully it won't be so confusing. Now, let's stop. 1 second. Again, why am I a ger, Rabbi? And the answer is because Noahide is not you. If you want more of even just the word itself, what more would I want? I don't know. Just do you feel you want more? Well, yeah. Okay, done. That's it. Ger. Okay, you want more? I don't know what more means. Do you want spirituality? Yes, I do. Done. You're a ger. What does spirituality mean? I don't know. Let's say it means God. Let's say it means a spiritual high on Friday night and Shabbos. Everybody's different. There are no definitive answers to these questions. All there is the question itself. Do you want spirituality, whatever that means? Yes, I do. Done. You're a ger. Do you want more? I don't know what more means. Do you want to do more than 7? Well, something. Yeah. Okay, done. You're a ger. All right, do you want to do more? No, I like my 7, but I want to pray. Okay, you're a ger. Anything that goes beyond 7 laws is why he's called Chasidei Omos Ha'olam. A Chasid is pious, he who goes and does more than is expected. You are only expected to do 7 laws of Noah. A Jew is only expected to do 613. Now, how do I become a Hasidic Jew? Maybe you should be a light to the nations, a priest to the nations, and educate yourself on those 7, buddy. How do you become a Hasidic Noahide? Realize you need to do more than 7. If you start doing more than 7, and I start doing more than 613, we come together in the middle. You can call that the Ger Tzedek and the righteous priest, or the priest light to the nations program. For all other intents and purposes, that's called Mashiach, that's called redemption, that's called Tikkun Olam. That's called Tikkun Adam. That's called friendship. It's called world peace. It's called getting along. Frankly, I call it being normal. Right? No more bickering and arguing. And you'll find out that from that little window of the universe, people start to see things alike. They see things very profoundly. They see things deeply. They see God in the world. They see the hand of God. They become educated. They become enlightened beings. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to become, whatever it is, you become a Torah observant human being on the highest level possible. That actually is enlightenment. Thank God. Abraham's called Gertoshav. We did that inside. Okay. There are many ways of the verses being cut up. Gertoshav, Ger b'sharecha. Each one is different. Each one is unique. Now, it is not to change the definition of Ger. It is an enhancement. Look it up. Learn the practicality. Learn the background. You will be surprised how far the Ger goes. Right? Ger characters like Naaman, Queen of Sheba, the tribe of Yehuda, Ruth, in law like Shabbos, in holidays, in prayer, in mitzvahs, and in Torah, the social demographics of the first temple, second temple, the last 2,000 years, even your next door neighbor. Right? The Messiah comes, there are 30 nobility of Gerim in the world like Abraham in every generation. It becomes 50% of the Torah you never knew existed, or the part you did know existed, but didn't ask the rabbi, not for what he thought, but to let him actually know. And I will end with this. Well, no, let me give a couple more things, actually. Let's go. The Amidah prayer. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the Amidah prayer, 18 blessings the Jews offer 3 times a day. One of the parts of the prayer, it says, the tzaddikim, the chassidim, yada, 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 and the Gerei Tzedek. All right, anybody familiar with this prayer? Where it talks about the Gerei Tzedek? You should now be aware, the Maharal of Prague, who, there are certain rabbis that are kosher by everybody's account. Right? Just there's no argument. I guarantee you, and I will bet any money on this, you ask any Jew on earth who's a scholar, his opinion of the Maharal of Prague, he will say, great Jew. I guarantee you that. And you can then let him know that the Maharal says the Ger Tzedek of that Amidah prayer is going on the Noahide. Or let's say, we're not talking Noahide now, the Ger Toshav, Ger Tzedek, who is a non-Jew. That is not to the exclusion of the convert, but it is thought the convert is mentioned amongst Judaism, because he is a Jew. Therefore, the Ger Tzedek, the Maharal states explicitly in Gevoras Hashem, this is a non-Jew. The point, really, that this matters the most is all of Kabbalah, all of it, is derived from Noahide Ger doctrine, i.e. 7 Sfirot, upper 3, which is called Gimel Rishonim, which is the initial letters that spells Ger. Okay? And the end of all Kabbalah, the repair of the world Kabbalistically, and the world that was repaired in Noah's time, is 100% involved with the Ger program. Adam sinned so that Sinai, long story short, Adam sins that at Sinai there should be a Jewish nation and a Ger nation, and they are the new Adam and Eve. Sinai repairs Garden of Eden, and the Jews and Ger must get together, unified as brothers, to rectify this world. Okay, now we will end with this. The shin on the head of the tefillin of a Jewish guy praying, there's a 3-headed shin on one side and a 4-vaved headed shin on the other side. The 4-vav shin, amongst the many interpretations, and they're all correct, they're not contradictions, but the most profound one, in my opinion, is the 4-headed shin represents the righteous Ger. The Ger who is a part of the house of Israel. There are Cohen, Levi, Israel, and Ger. And this, it just opens the door that the Gerim are part of the house of Israel. All right, if you don't think you're a part of the house of Israel, I wish you well. You're a Noahide. Have fun. May you, if you wish to take on more, see more, if God gives you the merit to do more, new Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are in the story. Bob, you mentioned this. Just a quick interruption. Sinai was the repair of Garden of Eden. Right? That is a Talmud in the Sanhedrin tractate. Thus, the Jewish nation takes on one perspective. The Gerim are, let's say, the helper. This is in the Zohar explicitly. Male, female applies to both. Israel is both male and feminine in different positions. right, of understanding, and certain times this, certain times that. The Gerim are sometimes male, sometimes female, but in Kabbalistic terms, the world of Bria and the world of Atzilus come together to remove evil from the world, and they become one house of Israel. All right, so Adam and Eve were to be, let's say, the template to this. Adam sins, evil comes to fruition, eventually leads to a Sinai. Sinai then is the new view of the world. The world is Gertoshav. Jews get the Torah. The world is liberated from idolatry and from slavery and from Amalekitism. Okay, and they come to be helping each other in brotherhood, and that brotherhood is the theme of the whole Torah. Cain, Abel, Ishmael, Isaac, Esav, Yaakov, rectified only with Mashiach Eliyahu, symbolic of Ger and Jew. And you find that the Tanakh is filled with Gerim, Queen of Sheba, Naaman, many others. The history of the first temple, second temple, holiday involvement, Gerim everywhere. Okay, the path of the Torah, really in its deepest level of understanding, is when the Ger sticks out. He is no longer just this invisible figure. He's a person. He is real. He has a neshama. He is not a donkey. He is part of the house of Israel. He is a part of Torah. He learns Torah. He has one God just like you. His name is Hashem. And Hashem has one people in the world, the house of Israel, whether it be Cohen, Levi, Israelite, or Ger. Thank you very much. And may everybody merit, Jews and Gerim, to one day walk freely in the world of the Ger.